For my family, I'm always at my best. That's why I also want the best in my kitchen. And that means only Eggland's Best Eggs. They're always so fresh tasting and delicious, with 6 times more vitamin D, 10 times more vitamin E, and 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. So why give your family less when they can have the best? Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs. For added convenience, look for our hard-cooked peeled eggs.
Suffering from dry, tired, irritated eyes? Don't let dry eyes win. Use Sustain Pro. It hydrates, restores, and protects dry eyes for up to 12 hours. Sustain Pro. Triple action dry eye relief.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Well, hello there, my friends, and welcome back. My name is Stephanie Safarian, and you're listening to episode 577 of Sustainable Minimalist. This is a listener-supported show about intentional and eco-friendly minimalist living. And on today's show, we are discussing everything you need to know about AI, and more specifically, AI data centers. Now, it can certainly feel like artificial intelligence is being pushed down our throats, doesn't it? Whether it's a new AI assistant that's popping up in an app that I have used for years, or whether it's a company that's replacing real humans with chatbots when I call for customer service. Heck, it's even when I am going to write an email on Gmail for work and Google Gemini offers to write my emails for me. AI is everywhere. It's being pushed on me, and I would even go so far as to say it's being pushed on a reluctant population. Companies are investing heavily in artificial intelligence everywhere. And on the one hand, I get it, right? For companies, it's all about cutting costs and generating profit. AI can handle 10,000 customer inquiries at once for the price of a single server. That's a heck of a lot cheaper than employing 10,000 humans and renting out an office building. No CEO wants to be the one who ignored AI while their competitors used AI to cut prices and speed up product development. I get that. But this cost-cutting new tech comes with consequences. In my view, I'm going to make the argument today that AI presents 2 problems. The first is the individual and societal problems, like the erosion of critical thinking, like using a chatbot as a substitute for an emotional real-life connection, like the erosion of truth online, like the concentration of power and money into those tech giants. So those are one set of consequences. But there's another set of consequences that, in my personal opinion, are not getting talked about enough, and those are the massive environmental consequences associated with AI. That's what we're going to spend the majority of our time talking about today. In my opinion, the AI race represents just more of the same faulty thinking that has gotten us into this environmental mess in the first place, right? We tend to push something new, in this case, push new tech onto people and the planet first, and we deal with the consequences later, chase the money at the expense of the planet. We've been doing this for decades. When are we going to learn that the way we've been doing things is no longer working? That's the big question that we're not going to answer in a 30-minute podcast today, but I hope we continue to think about it. Now, today's episode is just me and you. If you're new here and you're thinking, what's going on? Who's the guest? There's no guest today. I am the only person's voice you'll be hearing today. Once in a while, I take a topic, I break it down, and I give you everything you need to know on the topic with some action steps. Now, I'll just say, Again, if you're new here, I used to be a high school English teacher. So I like to present these one-on-one informative episodes as I would structure a lesson. So if I sound like a teacher today, my teacher voice is coming out. I haven't been a teacher in over 12 years, but the teacher voice still lives deep within me. And sometimes it comes out on these shows. Now, I wanted to cover AI and more specifically data centers today because I recently read a study that found that a significant majority of Americans are unaware that AI requires massive physical factories and servers in order to run. Even fewer Americans are aware that potential data center projects are being planned in our communities, and oftentimes communities don't get the chance to fight back. These projects are swept under the rug until construction is just ready to begin. So yeah, we're talking about data centers today and their environmental impacts and their financial impacts on surrounding communities, yes. But we're also discussing some action steps on what you can do if, like me, you're leery about AI being pushed down your throat and perhaps even a data center is coming to your community and you don't know what to do. We're doing all that today. We're doing a lot. Now let's back up and let's discuss what on earth is a data center. You've heard the term, but do you know what it is? Well, every time you send an email, every time you stream something on Netflix, every time you save a photo on your iPhone to the cloud, right? The cloud is not this thing in the sky. The cloud is a data center. All that information is being processed and stored in a data center. And a data center essentially is a big fat warehouse with hundreds or even thousands of computers. Data centers are not new. Data centers have been around for as long as computers have. But the reason we're talking about data centers now is because of artificial intelligence. AI is quickly increasing the need for more data centers as companies are training our preferred AI training models, Google Gemini, ChatGPT. So AI is the software that provides the brains, but the data center is the physical body that provides the power and the processing. A data center is not just a room full of computers. There are powerful computers in it, yes, but there are also gigantic hard drives, routers, gigantic batteries, diesel backup generators, cooling systems. These computers, they need all that because computers generate a lot of heat, intense amounts of heat. Data centers use gigantic industrial-grade air conditioning or even liquid cooling as well, to prevent their hardware from overheating and melting. Now, many data centers are over 30,000 square feet in size. They use up a lot of land. They use a lot of power. They use a lot of water. And as of 2024, more than half of the world's data centers were owned by the tech giants, so Amazon, Microsoft, Google. Data centers have to stay on for 99.999% of the time. They cannot shut off. And if they do shut off, like if a data center for a bank or a hospital shuts down for just 10 minutes, it's a major catastrophe. So that's why data centers have these gigantic backup batteries and giant generators that burn diesel to ensure that these data centers never lose power. So when it comes to the environmental consequences of data centers, we've got to talk about energy and electricity, and we have to talk about water. So we're going to talk about energy first. Surprise to no one, or maybe it is a surprise. And if it is, surprise. AI uses a lot more energy than a simple Google search. A lot. And that's because AI requires significantly more physical work from the data center to answer your question. When you ask AI a question, it uses roughly 10 times more electricity than using a traditional Google search. And if you stop and think about it, this really does make sense, right? Because, think about going to the library. A traditional Google search back in the last, 20 years, if you were going to do a Google search, that was like going into a library and asking a librarian to find a book for you. Right? It's like looking something up in a massive card catalog at the library. You say to the librarian, I want to find out this fact. The librarian can point you in the right direction. But when we're using AI, when we're using generative AI, this is akin to asking that same librarian to write your essay for you on the spot. That requires a lot more energy. The data center in this case has to run billions of calculations to predict the next word in the sentence of your essay, and that requires constant high-power electricity. Now, if you're asking the librarian to write the essay for you, you've got to give that librarian something in return for all its effort, right? Similarly, we've got to give AI a lot of stuff, a lot of energy, a lot of water in return for its effort whenever we use AI. So the first thing we got to give AI is electricity. The data center industry accounted for 4.5% of the total electricity use in the U.S. as of last year, 2025. That's according to the Department of Energy, by the way. But by 2028, so just 2 years from now, that number is expected to jump to 12%. So the amount of electricity that AI needs is just about doubling every year. In fact, a single AI data center can use as much electricity as 175,000 homes. Now, electricity hounds, like these data centers, they have consequences for you on your life. Because data centers use so much electricity, they can and they are raising electricity rates for everybody who lives near the data center. And I'm talking raising electricity rates by up to hundreds of dollars a month. Now, Norman Bashir, he's a computer engineer at MIT. He found that because data centers are huge power consumers, these data centers are often really disrupting the power grid infrastructure. And when the grid infrastructure is disrupted, that can decrease the lifespan of your appliances, for example. So your washing machine, your refrigerator, when the grid is overtaxed because of these data centers, those household appliances in your home, their lifespans get shorter. And so back to electricity costs for a minute. Since February of 2020, electricity prices have increased by an average of 40% across the United States. In some area, that rate of increase is even higher. Like in Washington, D.C., for example, electricity costs have increased by 93% in the last 5 years. And the rise in electricity costs have not affected each type of user equally. Residential electricity costs, so electricity to homes and apartments, those costs for residential customers have risen by about 10%. But for commercial energy users, like your local neighborhood store, like the gigantic data center and everything in between, commercial energy users have seen their rates increase by just about 3%. So what does this mean? This means that rising electricity costs are being passed on to you and me. Now, also, because data centers eat up so much electricity, grid operators are having to update their infrastructure. So the wires, the poles, the this, the that. And these repairs cost an awful lot of money. So guess who, just take a wild guess, guess who is eating the costs of these infrastructure repairs? You think it's Google? No, it's not. It's residential customers. There are so many examples of this. I'll just give you one. In 2023, there was a grid operator titled PJM. They managed transmissions from Ohio to Maryland. They approved a $5 billion project to update transmission lines, partly because, the energy hogs, the data centers needed updated infrastructure. In Maryland and Virginia, most of the costs of that project were put on residential customers, even though the transmission line that was being repaired and updated was not primarily for use of the people living in the homes and apartments that paid for the infrastructure updates. Now, this probably goes without saying, but I'm just going to say it so we're all on the same page. Electricity in 2026, as of this recording, still requires the burning of fossil fuels to generate. We are very, very, very in snail's pace, very slowly transitioning to clean energy in this country to power our homes and our data centers. Very slowly, too slowly. And the reality is that, we're still burning fossil fuels to generate electricity. And if our current president has anything to say about it, clean energy will just disappear and we'll revert to the old ages in which we only burned fossil fuels to generate electricity. President Trump is actively shutting down clean energy projects, even clean energy projects that are currently up and running and currently providing clean energy to power the grid. I know, it's absurd. It doesn't make any cognitive sense. But just to recap, energy provides the electricity that AI data centers need to run. And the energy is still largely coming from fossil fuels. Different areas of the country power their grid with different amounts of clean energy, but fossil fuels, regardless of where you live, I'm not aware of anywhere that's 100% running on clean energy at this moment. So while a traditional web search, so just typing something into Google, emits about 0.2 grams of CO2 into the atmosphere, an AI search emits between 2 grams and 5 grams of carbon into the atmosphere. And that depends heavily on whether the data center is powered by solar and wind or fossil fuels or some sort of combination between the two. So you can ask your question in Google and put 0.2 grams of carbon into the atmosphere, or you can ask that same question into your favorite AI chatbot and you'll generate significantly more carbon, between 2 grams and 5 grams. So something to think about. Researchers at Cornell found that by 2030, the current rate of AI growth would annually, every year, put 24 to 44 million metric tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And you're probably thinking to yourself, what do those numbers mean, Stephanie? They mean nothing to me. They're too big. That's the emissions equivalent of adding 5 to 10 million cars to U.S. roads. Gas-burning cars, of course. My husband and I, we are so proud of ourselves. We were so proud of ourselves. We just recently traded in our 15-year-old hybrid vehicle and we got an electric vehicle. And we're so excited about it. We love it. It's amazing. It runs great. It's so great to not have to think about ever going to a gas station. We've had no problems. And we're tapping ourselves on the back, right? But we shouldn't be, because taking one gas-burning car off the road is doing nothing when AI is adding the equivalent of 5 to 10 million of those cars onto U.S. roads every single year. It's not a stretch to suggest that putting more load on our electrical grids without more clean energy projects is prolonging our reliance on fossil fuels. And that, of course, is much to the delight of our president and his fossil fuels friends. We're moving on to the water issues. I already alluded to the fact that all these computers in such a relatively small space, they're going to generate a lot of heat. And that's where water comes in. To keep all these computers and servers from overheating, data centers cool them with air conditioning systems that are run by water. Now, I'll say at the offset, there are some emerging technologies that are, again, emerging to cool the machines without the blatant wasting of water. But the tech isn't there yet. It's just not there yet. So as of now, these data centers are just drinking an awful lot of water. In March of 2024, Forbes famously reported that the water consumption associated with a single conversation with ChatGPT was comparable to the water in a standard plastic water bottle. All that water, it's just being lost to evaporation as the water keeps the data center cool. So I mentioned just before the break that if you have a question and you use AI to get your question answered, you're emitting between 2 grams and 5 grams of carbon into the atmosphere. If you use AI, you're also effectively taking a bottle of water, unscrewing the cap, and dumping it out on the floor. Every time you use AI. I know, crazy, right? I want to just pause here and let the irony sink in for a hot minute. Maybe you've heard around the globe, but also especially here in the United States, we are facing a water crisis. It might not get on the front page of our preferred news sources, but the reality is the water crisis is still here. It's no longer this future threat that environmentalists are whining about. It's here. And it's here primarily because of climate change. Right this minute, about 42% of the lower 48 states are experiencing some level of drought. That is nearly half our country. In Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, over 80% of monitoring stations are reporting snow levels below the 20th percentile. That means that there will be less melt-off to fill reservoirs this spring. In Texas, some reservoirs are at historic lows. Residents are facing mandatory 25% cuts in water usage. And again, this is anecdotal, but I live in New England. I've always lived in New England. When I was younger, we had these massive snowstorms. So much fun. Schools canceled. In the last 10 years, we have not had many major snowstorms, if any, that I can remember. We're getting dustings. We're getting up to 3 inches. But what does that mean? That means when spring and summer comes around, we're in drought conditions because we're not getting the precipitation we need in the winter to get us through the hot months. And yet, so here's the irony, and yet, despite the emergence of more drought areas and the emergence of more powerful droughts, every time we use AI, we're essentially taking a bottle of water and we're dumping it on the floor. So we're moving into part 2 of today's show, which is what you can do. We talked about rising electricity bills. We talked about water scarcity. There's also, of course, personal data collection and the loss of privacy online. Oh my goodness. The issue with AI is not just the ugly box store data center. It's also all those impacts that AI is having on broader communities. Energy, yes. Water, yes. Sustainable energy futures, yes. Access to clean and affordable water, yes. There's also the fact that this new technology is really just being pushed on us without any forethought, without safety studies, without regulation. The AI race, in my humble opinion, again, it just represents ever more of the faulty thinking that has gotten us into this environmental mess in the first place. We'll push it on people first. We'll use planetary resources to fuel it, and then we'll deal with the consequences later at some, unforeseen date. The date is here, friends. The consequences are here. I was just recently listening to an interview with perhaps my favorite author, Ian McEwan. He just wrote a great book. It's not about climate change, but there's a heavy climate change tilt. It is set 100 years into the future. And in the interview, Ian McEwan said, the book title is called What We Can Know. Highly recommend. Best book I've read in a long time, What We Can Know. But in this interview that I was listening to, Ian McEwan said, the time to debate whether climate change is real or not, that date is gone. Climate change is here. Just open your eyes. Just look outside. Just read the newspaper. Nearly every story can be brought back to the ravages of climate change somehow. Climate change is here. The date is now. The date to think about those consequences was 50, 75 years ago, because climate change is here now. So if you're concerned about more of the same, more of the pushing something on people in the planet without thinking about the consequences, you have some choices. Step 1, in my opinion, is to starve the machine. Starve the machine. That basically means don't give AI the fuel it needs. Don't use AI if you don't need it. Using AI is just another form of cognitive offloading, right? We have always offloaded tasks. We use a calculator instead of using a pen and paper. We use GPS for directions. But AI is different than a calculator. AI is different than a GPS. And that's because AI is not necessarily about offloading tasks only. It's about offloading thinking. There's a word for this. It's called cognitive debt. Just as a body, muscles wither without exercise, our brains wither without reasoning. Another way to say this is like cognitive atrophy, I would say. The consequences of cognitive atrophy are the weakening of neural connections in your brain, memory problems. I mean, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And that's, of course, your brain I'm talking about. Remember, too, that in this digital economy, your attention is the most valuable currency. So consider what you're giving your attention to. AI is significantly better than old algorithms at predicting what you will click, buy, or watch. So if you thought targeted advertisements were bad before, just watch out. AI is making them significantly harder to turn away from. Now more than ever is the time for each one of us to get really darn serious, to get really darn intentional about inserting analog activities into your days. And good thing, because I heard that 2026 is the year of the analog. I don't know, let's make it not a meme, not content on social media, but let's actually put analog activities into our lives. Let's actually do it. Do a puzzle. Shut your phone off, bake something, get outside, live a full, rich life without screens. Oh my goodness, yes. I do not need AI to write my work emails because I can respond myself. I do not need AI to provide a summary of my meeting because I was paying attention. I do not need to have a conversation about my love life with my preferred chatbot because I'm lonely and looking for connection. And neither do you. In researching for this episode, I came across the Wait 10 rule, the Wait 10 rule. And the Wait 10 rule is before you ask AI for a solution or a summary or to write you that email, give yourself 10 minutes to just struggle with the problem manually. Create a little bit of friction in your life to keep your neural pathways active. So wait 10 minutes, go analog. And of course, execute your right to opt out. As of this recording, January 2026, almost every major platform has an AI training toggle buried in their settings. So Meta, LinkedIn, X, you name it. Adobe, Slack, yes, even those. So go to your settings in whatever your platform is and object to your data being used for training. It's as simple as toggling it off. The hard part is finding the setting because most of these companies have buried it really deep. But that's where a traditional Google search could come in really great, right? Go to Google, ask, how do I toggle off AI training on my Meta accounts and see what comes up. Spend 10 minutes and just do it. All right, that's step 1, starve the machine. Step 2 is to push back. And as I was writing this section of today's show, I really had in mind, what to do if a data center is being planned for construction near you and your community. Across our country, communities are pushing back. They're saying they do not want data centers built in their backyards. I mean, all over the country, Arizona, Missouri, Indiana, you name it, it's happening. In 2025, over 140 grassroots groups across 24 states successfully blocked or delayed a data center project. Now, I've heard a lot about community organizing at work here, and I'll pause and I'll say that I work for a nonprofit network, and one of the arms of our network is a community-oriented group. So we will, if you ask us to, we will come into your community and we will help you organize so that you have the tools and the resources you need to fight off whatever the environmental or human health threat is. And this is not just about data centers. If you have a company in your town and they're dumping PFAS into your waterways and you don't know what to do about it, you can contact this arm of our network and we will help you. But more and more, concerned residents are contacting us, not me, but my network, to help them fight the proliferation of crypto mines and data centers. In one such instance, a woman from North Carolina contacted us because a data center had been constructed half a mile from her home. She and her neighbors were bombarded with unbearable noise pollution. When winter rolled around, they suffered rolling blackouts due to the data center's excessive energy consumption. And while this woman, she could not get the existing data center shut down, she was able to get an ordinance passed in her town to block the construction of future data centers. So good news, right? But by then it was too late because this data center had already moved in and she had to move. She actually had to leave. Now, if a data center is planned in your community and you do not want it, and let's be honest, why would you? Noise, diesel backup generators, light pollution, secrecy around how much energy and water they're using, bigger electricity bills. Like, why would anybody want this in their community? I'll answer my own question. One of the big refrains I hear is that data centers create jobs, right? They stimulate the economy. But the reality is that data centers only create jobs in the construction phase, in constructing the 30,000 square foot warehouse. Because once the data center is built, Even the largest data centers, they only employ a maximum of like 100 people. So they aren't job creators for the long haul, right? That's despite what the industry wants you to believe. If Google comes into town and says, oh, we're going to create so many jobs if you just let us cut down, those trees over there and build a data center, they're short-term creating jobs and they're long-term leaving you with the consequences. So if a data center is coming to your area, you need to push. First of all, let me back up one more time and say, these data centers, keep it quite quiet that they're looking at your town or your community until the last minute. So they're doing a lot of quiet planning. So people don't have a lot of time to organize and push back. So if a data center is being planned in your area and you know about it, you need to push your city council to require a study on how it will impact residential electricity rates, how it will impact the water table that you rely on. In places like Pennsylvania and Virginia even, residents are arguing successfully that tech giants should pay for their own grid updates rather than passing the cost on to community members, and rightfully so. If you don't know of and you're not aware of a data center knocking on your door, you can still do something now, right? You can vote on noise and water ordinances now and get them passed. Many communities are now passing strict decibel limits. And if they're passed, a data center won't be able to move in, right? Also, you could pass water first laws that prevent data centers from using drinking quality water for cooling. And of course, I have to plug my nonprofit. Like, we don't make any money off of this, so I feel okay doing it. We're a nonprofit. We're here to help you. If you do have a data center in the works in your community and you need help organizing, you need help getting the tools to successfully advocate for you and your neighbors, I've put a link to Community Action Works in the show notes. That's the arm of our network that will hopefully come in and help you. All right. Wow, what a show. So that's our show. I hope I left you with everything you need to know about data centers and more specifically the consequences of AI. I really do need to, in a future show, talk more about those individual and societal impacts of AI, cognitive debt, memory problems, isolation, the erosion of community, all of those not so fun aspects of AI as well. If you're interested in an episode like that, let me know. Shoot me an email. Next week, we are talking about something completely different. Something completely different. We're talking about a phase of life that I'm going through at the moment, and that is perimenopause. And more specifically, what I'm really excited about on next week's show is we're flipping the aging script. So that's what we're talking about next week. I will see you then. As always, you can reach out if you need me. The ways to do that are in the show notes at mamaminimalist.com/577. I'll see you next week and take care.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.